Hello, and welcome to our Impactful Projects and Planning micro training series. I'm Jamie Asdani. In today's session, we're going to talk about project planning and how to integrate the 5 key elements of impactful projects into one project plan. So over the last few months, over the last few micro training sessions, I've been talking about these 5 key elements of impactful project management: scope, stakeholders, outcomes or deliverables, schedule, and communications. I believe that a focus on these elements throughout a project can greatly impact your project's success, especially for mission-driven organizations. And we definitely want to be focusing on these elements during project planning. So project planning helps us strategize a path to project success, allowing us to consider and plan for all of the factors that will impact our project, including the 5 key elements. Project plans also help us set clear expectations for our stakeholders so that we are all on the same page about what will be accomplished during the project. Clear project plans can also help our project team members visualize their role on the project and really better understand the work they will be expected to perform and how their work impacts the project as a whole. So how should we approach project planning, especially in mission-driven organizations? How can we integrate planning for scope, stakeholders, outcomes, schedule, and communications into one project plan? So I've got one approach and 3 tips for project planning that I want to share with you today. So let's dive in. The approach I recommend for mission-driven organizations is to follow these 5 steps in project planning, and we'll go through each step one by one. So the first step is to define or confirm your project scope. Scope establishes our project's purpose and is critical to ensuring buy-in and engagement. So you want to get your scope nailed down as early as possible. Next, we want to identify our project stakeholders and define the roles that they will play in the project. Stakeholder engagement is really the foundation of projects and mission-driven organizations, so we want to consider and plan for engaging our stakeholders as early as possible in the project. Next, plan for communication. So good communication is so important to project success. So communication planning also needs to happen early, and it pairs nicely with stakeholder planning. Then we want to define our outcomes or deliverables. And once we've defined what those outcomes are, it's much easier to plan for other specific factors that will impact your project, like quality measures, developing a detailed budget, figuring out how you're going to procure the resources that you need. And outcomes planning also leads us to task planning, and that is what is going to drive the actions of our project. And then you can go ahead and set a schedule, creating deadlines and milestones that can be used to set expectations and monitor project progress. So this approach to project planning incorporates the 5 key elements, and I believe it can really help you create an actionable plan. And so that's an approach to developing your plan. I also have some tips to share. My first tip is to involve your team and key stakeholders in planning. So while project managers are absolutely accountable for planning, that doesn't mean that we have to do it all alone. So rely on your team and project initiators or sponsors to provide feedback and input. You should definitely discuss and confirm the project scope with your project initiators and involve them and your team in stakeholder identification. We can also involve our team in communication planning, and we will likely need their expertise to define outcomes and tasks. And of course, we want to work with our team to ensure that our schedule is reasonable and achievable. So my second tip is to broadly share your plan. So once you have a plan, we want to make that plan a transparent document to encourage trust, but also to encourage engagement with our project. I recommend making at least the key elements of your plan available to all of your stakeholders. So sharing the project scope, a stakeholder role list, a schedule, and outcomes definitions can really help set expectations and also maintain support and momentum throughout your project. Project management tools and dashboards are great at supporting this type of sharing, allowing you to communicate your plan and project progress relatively easily. And that leads me to my third tip, which would be is to be prepared to revise your plan. So I want you to let go of the idea of creating the perfect plan, even though you are going to be sharing your plan with leadership and stakeholders. So while it would be amazing if the first draft of your plan required no changes while also inspiring your team and ensuring project success, our goal should not be a perfect plan. Our goal is a plan that allows us to successfully deliver on our project's outcomes. So being able to respond to changing needs and a shifting environment is more important than plan perfection. So be prepared to rethink, revise, and redo your plan. So start with these 5 steps. Get input from your team and key stakeholders, share your plan once you've drafted it, and be prepared to revise your plan to meet changing circumstances. So that's what I have for you today on project planning. If you'd like more help with project planning, you might want to check out our project planning checklist. This simple checklist is a great start to project planning and can help you develop a more consistent project planning workflow. So this free download is available at yazdaniconsulting.com resources. If you need more hands-on support leading projects and teams, visit our project solutions page at yazdaniconsulting.com projects to learn about our services. Great. So I'm happy to take any questions that you have about project planning. Please add them in the comments. Due to the slight delay that happens when you're streaming on LinkedIn, I'm going to give folks a few moments to get on the same page with me and add their questions. Now, if I'm not able to answer your question live, I'm happy to respond later in the comments. And of course, you can always find all of the ways to contact me at yazdaniconsulting.com contact. Please do reach out to me if you'd like to talk about project planning. Okay, so a question I'm often asked is, I'm expected to have a plan right away, including a detailed budget. How can I involve stakeholders given the short timeline? And so I would say this is a really common issue, especially in mission-driven organizations where there's often planning that has to happen to get project funding. This is where I think involving a few key folks can really help. So you can probably confirm a scope, identify a few stakeholders, set a basic schedule, and begin defining outcomes in a single meeting with a few key stakeholders, which should help you with those budget estimates. Then you can involve more stakeholders once you really dive into assigning roles, planning for communication, and of course, doing more detailed task planning. Now, because your plan should be a living document, you can involve more stakeholders later as you rethink and revise your plan. So another question is, what do you mean by mission-driven organizations? So I use mission-driven to mean nonprofits, associations, educational institutions, libraries, and government agencies, because these organizations are mission-focused rather than profit-driven. Because projects in these types of organizations tend to be pretty collaborative. They require buy-in from diverse stakeholders. Success is usually measured by their users and community rather than in dollars. There are some elements of project management that I believe are more critical than in other sectors. And that's where those 5 key elements come from. But I do think the approach I shared today could really work in other types of environments, non-mission driven environments as well. Wonderful. So feel free to comment or reach out and message me with any additional questions that you have. And thank you so much for participating in our Impactful Projects and Planning micro training series. You can visit yazdaniconsulting.com IPP to view all of the sessions in the series and learn about upcoming micro trainings. Thank you.